All right, let's just jump right into it. We're about to explore a pretty challenging idea, one that really questions a cornerstone of modern physics. We're going to look at a perspective, straight from our source material, that basically suggests our whole understanding of reality, space and time, it might all be built on a huge misunderstanding. So let me start with a question that sounds, well, a little weird. When you look down at your shoes right now, are you actually seeing them where they really are? Now, according to the material we're covering today, the answer is a hard no. In this question, it's really meant to crack open a whole new way of thinking about how we see the world. Okay, here's the big idea. The source says that your physical body, what it calls your real body, is always in a different spot than the image of your body your brain is seeing. What you perceive is what it calls the image body, and it's always delayed. It's kind of like you're looking at a ghost of your past self that's already moved on. Now, to really get why this is such a radical idea, we've got to do a super quick recap of the standard view. Einstein's special theory of relativity. This is the physics that most of us learned in school. So, the most important takeaway from the conventional view is this. It doesn't matter how fast you're going, whether you're flying towards the light beam or away from it. If you measure its speed, you will always get the exact same number, c. It's like reality itself bends and stretches just to make sure that one rule is never broken. Okay, so now let's get into the heart of the counter-argument from our source. This introduces a totally different foundation for how reality works. It wants you to imagine the universe not as just empty space, but as something else, something more solid. So this model says there's this absolute background to everything, a master coordinate system for the whole universe. And the best analogy is a giant online game server. In this version of reality, the speed of light is only constant relative to the server, this background field, not relative to every single player or observer running around inside of it. And this is where it gets really interesting, because this slide just lays out the two choices so clearly. On one hand, you have Einstein's view. Reality is subjective and space and time are flexible for every person. But on the other hand, the source's view says, no, there's one single objective reality, and what we see is just distorted by our motion through it, kind of like experiencing lag in a video game. To prove its point, the source takes a classic thought experiment. You've probably heard of it, the light clock on a moving train. But it gives a totally different, and it argues a way simpler explanation for what's actually going on. So, forget about the idea that time itself slows down. The source says this is just a basic geometry problem. Think about it. If you fire something at a moving target, you have to aim ahead of it, right? You have to lead the target. That means your projectile has to travel a longer diagonal path to hit it. Well, the source argues light works the exact same way. And here's a concrete example to make it click. The source calculates that if a light pulse on a stationary clock takes, say, exactly 10 seconds to go from the floor to the ceiling, that same clock on a moving train would take about 10.05 seconds. Not because time got all stretchy and weird, but simply because the light had to travel a longer distance through this absolute field to hit its moving target. Okay, and this leads to what the source believes is the logical nail in the coffin for relativity. The whole argument boils down to a really basic rule of logic. A thing is either true or it's false. It can't be both at the same time.
See, according to the source, Einstein's theory forces you to believe that a single photon of light is simultaneously taking two different paths. For the passenger on the train, it's going straight up, but for the person watching from the tracks, it's going diagonally. The source just says that's impossible. A single physical thing cannot be on two different trajectories in two different places at the exact same instant.
And that's the bottom line. The source is saying physics has to pick one. One path has to be the real one. And it argues that the diagonal path, the actual journey through this absolute electromagnetic field, is the only one that's physically real. The straight vertical path that the passenger sees, that's just a subjective illusion. So let's see how this all connects to a real-world experiment. The source takes a famous experiment from 1971, which put super-accurate atomic clocks on airplanes and reinterprets the results to fit its model. Right, so in the original experiment, clocks on planes flying east with Earth's rotation ticked slower. Clocks on planes flying west against the rotation ticked faster than clocks on the ground. The source says this has nothing to do with their speed relative to the Earth. It's all about their absolute speed through this cosmic sea. The eastbound plane is moving fastest because its speed adds to Earth's rotation, so its clock ticks the slowest. The westbound plane is actually the slowest object of all because it's canceling out some of Earth's rotational speed, so its clock ticks the fastest. So why does the clock's ticking actually change? Well, the source argues it's not time itself that's changing, it's the clock's physical mechanism. It's a bit like the Doppler effect. You know how a siren's pitch changes as an ambulance moves past you? The faster the clock moves through this electromagnetic sea, the more the waves it's trying to count get stretched out, so it literally counts fewer ticks per second.
So where does all this leave us? Well, we're basically looking at two totally different ways of seeing the universe. And honestly, they both have their own internal logic and pretty profound consequences.
And in the end, this is the fundamental question the source material leaves us with. Does the universe literally bend and warp its own fabric of space and time, just for you, and for me, and for everyone else? Or are we all just players moving around inside a single, massive, absolute cosmic server, and everything we see is just shaped by the built-in delay, the fundamental lag, of light?